Hello, and welcome to Lunar Persuasion Astrology. Today we're going to look at the full moon for February 12th, 2025, in the sidereal sign of Cancer. Now, this is opposite, of course, of the new moon cycle in Capricorn that just took place about 2 weeks ago. So we've been in this growing, waxing on energy of the moon. And it's been kind of in the theme of your ambition and has a bit of a 10th house feel to it. So now we're entering into this full moon where the next 2 weeks will be more of a diminishing energy because the light of the moon is actually waning and decreasing as it heads towards the next new moon. So we're in the final half of this lunar cycle that is really about our emotional boundaries. And that's what we're going to look at today, because Cancer is the sign of the moon. It represents the fourth house of our home, of our personal space, and it's opposite of the public sphere of Capricorn, the 10th house energy, where we have ambition and take action. And so there is this invisible dynamic force between the two houses. And this is essentially an opposition. And when we have a full moon, it is the purest opposition that we can have of a duality, because the moon is the purest form of feminine energy. It only receives, it never gives. And the sun is the purest masculine energy. It only gives its light, right? So just think of the sun. The sun is never taking in any of our energy. It's always just giving its source. And so we can look at the space between these two houses as kind of like this dynamic force or this tension. And I'm calling it an emotional boundary, because it really is where you take things personally in the sign of Cancer and where you like to take credit in the sign of Capricorn. So we're going to look at that for each sign and where this energy is taking place for you based on your ascendant. So let's get into it. So Aries ascendant, this full moon is taking place in your fourth house. And so it will be in the themes of your personal life, things that you like to do in private. It's also where you make emotional connections. It could also be bringing up themes around your mother or a motherly figure, or just nurturing in general. So wherever Cancer is in the chart is where we take things personally. So for you, Aries, the fourth house is where you may tend to take things personally. And then opposite is Capricorn, where your 10th house is. So this is your work, your career, and this is where you like to take credit. So this dynamic between the fourth and 10th house is showing where this emotional boundary is for you. So the question to reflect on during this full moon for you, Aries, is what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions? What's getting in the way? Is there something that you need to release? And specifically release because the moon is actually in the final degree of Cancer. And this is an area of the sky known as a Gandanta point, which is a karmic knot. And so there's something that needs to be detoxified. And this can be something involving your home life, emotional connections that you have, and it can also just be an extra emotional time. So this is something where you can reflect on this axis and what that means for you, and just think about that. So what emotional boundary is blocking your ambition? So I'll leave you with that, and next we'll go to Taurus ascendant. This is taking place in your third and ninth house. So the full moon will be in your third house, and the third house is our house of courage. It's where we have effort and we pursue our interests. It's what we like to talk about and what we like to participate in. And it's also a house of ego because it's coming from the second house of our family values. And the third house is really that house of our own ideas and our own interest. And it's kind of like a listen to me, this is what I have to say, and these are my ideas. That are separate from what you've been given from childhood and from your family values. And so you can kind of see that with the third house. And for you, Taurus, this area of life is where you take things personally. Okay, so you may take your ideas and your interests very personally, and especially the words that you speak and how you communicate. Now, this is opposite the ninth house for you, which is Capricorn. And ninth house is the house of higher learning, beliefs, teachers, wisdom. And this is the house where you like to take credit. So there's this emotional tension between where you are taking things personally and where you like to take credit. And that's taking place in between your third and ninth house. So the third house is a comma house. So it does deal with your desires and having fun, just enjoying life in general. And so there's the moon at 29 degrees in Cancer, and this is like a Gadontal point. And so there's a karmic knot that needs to be untied. There's some sort of toxicity that needs to be purified. And this is where we think about, or this full moon is when you would reflect on the ideas that you have, the interests that you have, the information that you have coming in, and how does that align and how does that support the actions that you're taking based on what you believe. So it's something to think about, and it may be something that you need to let go, or for since it's a third house and it's kind of like it is the comma house, it's something that it'll be something that you enjoy and you'll be emotional over it. But it does need to go. Think about it. You'll know what comes up. You'll know what it is. And if there's nothing, then that's great. This is just showing where the energies are for you this cycle. All right, so now let's look at Gemini. Gemini ascendant, this is a full moon taking place in your second house. And your second house is the house of finances, wealth, your values. It deals with your speech and food and the things that you take in that way. It's also dealing with your resources. And this is opposite your eighth house. And so where you like to take credit, right? It's your eighth house of Capricorn. This is a transformative house, right? And so you like to take credit for your transformations and your growth. And that is expressed here between the eighth and the second house. And so if we look at what these two houses are, the second house is an Artha house. So this is about taking things in, acquiring, also working and having your resources and things like that. Well, it's opposite of the letting go energy. Now, both of these houses are feminine. And so it's natural for you to want to take in and to receive and maybe even wait a little bit, kind of wait around and see what happens. And so this change may not feel very good because the eighth house is about transformation. And so you may have been experiencing this over the last 2 weeks with sun being there, shining a light, bringing focus into this hidden area of life. So hopefully you've had maybe a breakthrough, or there's been some new hidden information that's come through that's been really helpful for you, and that will help you let go of some of these resources that aren't serving you anymore. There's something that you've acquired, and that's the reflection on today. So what is that emotional boundary that's blocking your ambitions. It's something that you've acquired. It's something that you may be holding on to, and it could be very emotional for you as well. So that's just something to think about. What emotional boundary is blocking your ambition? All right, now we're going to move to Cancer Ascendant. This is a full moon taking place in your first house of self and physical body. And so it's an axis between the first and seventh house. This is the reflection and projection. I call this the mirror. And it is the truest of oppositions, because it's how we see ourselves through the reflection of our relationships, and also how we present ourselves in relationships, and how the relationships come back and affect us. And so for Cancer, this first house for you is Cancer, ruled by the moon. So you're very familiar with having emotions and being an emotional person in general. And so you can actually be taking yourself quite personally, which is fine, but we're looking at this in the perspective of what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions. And so what are you taking personally that could be preventing you from getting credit, or you want credit over here in your relationships, right? And so that's the reflection for this full moon. And it's something that's really simple. You probably already know what it is. And if you're doing great and you're doing well, that's awesome. This is just the energy that's being portrayed here for this lunar cycle. Now, your ruling planet moon is in this Gandanta point, so this could be extra heightened emotions for you during this time. And it could be something, a big realization comes in about your relationships and about how you are acting in your relationships, and some emotional boundary that's affecting that. And so that's really where the energy is for you in this house. Now, the first and seventh house are both Kendra houses. So these are the foundational houses in a chart, 1, 4, 7, and 10. So the first and seventh house imagine them as like a pillar in your life, like holding up the foundation of what's going on. And so you can see that this will be probably a significant transit for you in that way, and it may not be easy. Things that are in the Kendra houses they're called angles, and when you have an angle, it doesn't flow quite as well, right? Like imagine a right angle. Things have to kind of stop and then completely change directions in order to continue. So that's kind of the energy of when you have a Kendra house being activated. And so you do here with the first and seventh. So what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions? This is a time to reflect on what you're projecting, what's being projected back to you through your relationships. All right, let's take a look at Leo Ascendant. Leo, this full moon is taking place in your 12th house. So Cancer for you is your 12th house, and this is the house of solitude, of meditation, of sleep and dreams. It's also the house of isolation, and it can be, kind of a lonely and quiet house. This is where we let go of all the physical desires of the world, and we look and seek fulfillment through a higher purpose. And for you, this can be quite an emotional area of life. And actually, the 12th house is a house of confusion. And so these emotions could be a bit of confusion for you as well. Making emotional connections, there can be some uncertainties there. Now, the sun is in your 6th house of Capricorn. And so we're dealing with the 6-12 axis for you. Now, what's interesting about this is that both of these houses are considered Dashtana houses, and these are both challenging houses. And there is a slight difference, but it's interesting to know that this axis being activated is going to present some sort of challenge or problem that you need to solve and overcome. And the full moon in Cancer in the 12th is showing you that it's something that you need to surrender, that it's out of your control, and that you need to let it go. And that's going to be the solution. And when we have the sun in the 6th house is also an upachaya house, which means it's improving over time. So it's where you put effort. It's also an artha house. It's where you put effort in and you go to problem solve something. But in the 12th house, it's a moksha house. There's no effort there. And so it really is about letting go, surrendering, and just letting the universe take the wheel, see what's going on, and just maybe not fight it so hard. You'll know what that is in your life. And especially with moon being in the final degree of Cancer, there is some sort of karmic knot being untied. There is some sort of thing that needs to be detoxified. Okay. And so just think about that, Leo. What emotional boundary is blocking your ambition? All right, so now we're going to go to Virgo. Virgo ascendant, this full moon is taking place in your 11th house. And your 11th house is the house of gains and achievements. It's also where you have your goals and wishes. And so in order to feel success, you have to have had set a goal to begin with, right? It kind of sets the benchmark. It's the expectation. And so this house is where you may take things personally because it's the sign of Cancer. So you may take your achievements and your successes very personally. And it's opposite the 5th house of where you create and express yourself. So this 5th and 11th house axis there is this force of validation. There is this dynamic force of expectations between your individuality and those of society. And so you may take, because your 11th house is in such a personal sign of Cancer, you may take the opinions of others very personally. And opposite to that, the expression and the creativity that you express from your personal truth, you want credit for that, right? So you take things personally when people may judge you or judge your creative expressions, because you really do take credit in how you express yourself. And you're hardworking, right? And you like to express yourself in a very practical, down-to-earth way, but it's also receptive. And so you can see that here with your 5th and 11th house axis being Cancer and Capricorn. So this full moon is a time to reflect on what emotional boundary is blocking your ambition. What emotional boundary do you have that perhaps is something that you think society is placing on you or putting on you, and how is that affecting your creative expression? There's something going on there. And especially with the moon in the 29th degree of Cancer, this is a karmic knot to be untied. This is something that must be detoxified in your life. There's something going on regarding a dream or an aspiration that needs to be purified in a way in regards to how you're personally expressing yourself. The 11th house is a Kama house, and it's opposite this 5th house, which is a Dharma house. So there's this dynamic between fulfilling your life purpose with your truthful identity and enjoying life and being appreciated and having your creativity appreciated. And so that's this dynamic here between the 5th and 11th house. It's also a bit of a mask here, because you express yourself in the 5th house, but then you may put on a bit of a mask in the 11th house. And because this is where Cancer is, this could be very emotional. And I'm not talking about like boohoo crying emotional. I'm talking about just emotions in general. And depending on, the other placements you have in your chart, the other planets, this is emotion. It could be anger, it could be passion, it could be sadness, it could be happiness. But there is an intensity of emotion that takes place in your 11th house. And during this full moon, there will be something that needs to be detoxified in a way. And it has to deal with your creativity and the expectations you have in society. All right, Libra ascendant. This full moon is taking place in your 10th house. This is your house of career. It's your house of the world stage, where you are taking actions based on your beliefs. And so you may take things a bit personally here in this space at work. And if we look at the opposite house of Capricorn, this is your 4th house. And so the sign of Capricorn is where you want credit, right? And so we can see this being in your 4th house, that you want credit for your emotional connections. You want credit for the personal space that you have, that you've created, and this private sector of your life that you've created. You take credit for that. And it's opposite the 10th house of Cancer, where you take action in the world, but you are possibly sensitive to it, right? It could be, the workplace can be an emotional sensitivity place for you. It's also where emotions are just heightened in general with this full moon. And so with the moon being in the 29th degree of Cancer during this cycle, it's in that Gandanta point where there's a karmic knot that needs to be untied. There's something that needs to be detoxified. And so this could pertain to something related to your work and your career. And the question to ask yourself is, what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions? And so if this is something that rings a bell for you this lunar cycle, that could be where it's taking place. It's something between your personal and private life, something between what you're doing at work and what you're doing at home. And this is also the axis of exposure, because the 4th house is where you have your private secret space, and think of it like your diary, right? It's your personal thoughts, and it's the things you do when you're alone, versus the 10th house is what people see of you. And it's that level of exposure that you have control over, but also there's an uncontrollable nature to this axis and this boundary, because there's some things that would get exposed that you maybe not necessarily would want to be exposed in the public sphere. And so that's what this energy is between the 4th and 10th house. So there is some sort of emotional boundary that you may have that could be blocking your ambitions, that you may be feeling pretty emotional over. So that's the thing to reflect on during this full moon cycle, and to just really see where there could be any changes made that could possibly open up you being able to move forward with your ambitions, especially in work. Okay, Scorpio ascendant. Scorpio ascendant, this is your full moon in the 9th house. And the 9th house is your house of higher learning. It's your beliefs, your philosophies. And with Cancer being there, you could be quite emotional and could take your beliefs very personally. And it's opposite the 3rd house of Capricorn. And Capricorn is where we like to take credit for things, right? And so we have this opposition between your beliefs and your ideas. We have the third house of courage opposite the ninth house of higher learning. And this dynamic is really about making sure that the information that you have coming in, your ideas and that in your interests of the third house, are aligned with your higher beliefs and are aligned with your philosophies in life and how your outlook on life. And it's also what evolves into knowledge and wisdom. So not every piece of information is wise or knowledgeable, but it can be, depending on how you apply it. And so between this third and ninth house is this dynamic force of information turning into or morphing into wisdom, and then how you apply that wisdom in your life as a teacher, right? Like the universe being the ultimate teacher for us in life. And so we look at this full moon in your ninth house and we ask, what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions? And this could be a belief that you've had. This could be maybe a piece of wisdom or something that a teacher has shared with you that you may be grappling with. And because the moon is in the 29th degree during this full moon of Cancer, it's in that Gandanta point, that karmic knot. So there's something that needs to be untied and dealt with. There is something that needs to be detoxified in this area of life for you, especially in regards to a belief you have or a teaching that you may have received or knowledge that you may have acquired. And the third house is a house of effort, but the ninth house is a house of dharma, and it's an angle house, so it's an auspicious house. So things could be quite beneficial. It could be easy for you to let this thing go that is just not serving you anymore. And you'll know it. You'll know because it will be almost like a gut feeling, because it aligns with your purpose and your meaning in life. It's a dharma house, the ninth house is. And it's where you take things personally, and it could be very emotional, and that's okay. But you're going to want to take credit for your efforts and your work and your practical efforts from the third house. So you want to make sure that this dynamic between the third and the ninth is balanced in that way. Sagittarius ascendant. This full moon is taking place in your 8th house. This is a house of transformation, of hidden knowledge, sudden change, and it can be a difficult house. It's a Dhisthana house, and it's also a moksha house. So it's a challenging house, but it's also a house where there is surrender needed. Not necessarily taking action, but the action is letting go. And you can take your change and sudden transformations kind of personally. And this is seen opposite to your 2nd house of Capricorn, where you have your values and your speech, and these things you like to take credit for. So these are your values, these are your resources and the things that you're bringing in. You really like to take credit for that, and it's practical and it's down to earth. But opposite to your 2nd house is the 8th house, and that's where this full moon is. And so it's a time to reflect on what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions. And this is in a Gandanta point this time. The moon is at 29 degrees of Cancer, and this is a karmic knot that needs to be untied. And there's some sort of detoxification that's taking place that is pertained to a transformation. And it's something that you may have learned recently in the last 2 weeks. And now is a time to really reflect on that and let the change happen if it aligns with your values, right? And also, there will be this consideration of maintaining your independence as well. So the second and eighth house axis is an artha and a moksha dynamic. So it's about what you're bringing in opposed to what you're letting go. It's a holding on, letting go. Both of them are feminine houses. So the letting go portion doesn't feel good. That's why the eighth house it can feel uncomfortable during these transits if you're not, too keen on change. And with Cancer being in your eighth house, you take change very personally, right? And so that's something to think about. What emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions? And this will allow you to move forward with expressing yourself better in the future. So once you get through this, things will start to lift and you'll be dealing with the different energies on the other side, but you have to let go and you know what it is. And if there's nothing to let go, then you're doing great. Super awesome. All right, so let's go to Capricorn ascendant. Capricorn, this is taking place in your seventh house, full moon in your seventh house. And so this is a time to reflect around your relationships, and you could be feeling quite emotional in your relationships. They can be a point of emotion for you. You take things very personally with relationships, and this is opposite your first house, where your ambition of Capricorn is in your first house of self. And so this is where you like to take credit. You like to take credit for yourself and the things that you represent and the things that you project onto your relationships. But at the same time, you take things really personally within relationships. And so that's the dynamic to think about during this lunar transit, is what emotional boundary is blocking your ambitions? What are you taking personally that is preventing you from achieving your ambitions in the first house? That the effort and the practical, down-to-earth actions that you're taking in the first house, are they being blocked by an emotional boundary in regard to a relationship or that sort of thing? So this is pretty straightforward. It is dealing with Kendra houses. The first and seventh house are both Kendra houses. So this is that right angle energy where things must go one direction, then stop, and then change directions. And so it's not very fluid, and so it can feel difficult, but it will be foundational in any change that takes place. And because the moon is in Gandanta, it's during this cycle, it's at 29 degrees of Cancer, so there will be something in regard to a relationship, some sort of toxic emotion or emotional attachment that will need to be let go of in order for you to proceed. And you'll know what that is. It could be small, it could be big, but it's definitely in regards to your relationships, perhaps even your spouse or marriage if you're in a committed relationship. If you're not, if you're in a business, if you own your own business or have business partners, it could be in regards to that as well. Okay, Aquarius ascendant. This is your sixth house, full moon. And it is dealing with themes around health, around challenges or problems that you may be trying to overcome during this time. And with Cancer being in your sixth house, it is a Dhisthana house. So this is a challenging house. And it's about work and effort and just kind of doing the daily grind, things that have to be done. They're not fun, they're not comfortable. And so, with Cancer being there, it's an emotional space for you. And this opposition to Capricorn in your 12th house, where it's more of an isolated solitude, kind of a loner vibe with your work. And the fact that both houses are Dashthana houses is showing that this is a challenging and a difficult period. There's something to overcome. And you may have already overcome it, but this full moon is a time to reflect on that. And we're looking at the 6th house, which is the daily routine, the health, the service to others. And it could also be bringing up enemies, co-workers, or also pets. 6th house represents pets as well. And so there is some sort of emotional boundary blocking your ambitions. And we want to find out where that is, right? And so moon is in the 29th degree right now, or for the full moon will be in the 29th degree, which is a Gandanta point in the sky. And this is a karmic knot. There's something that needs to be undone. And there's something that needs to be detoxified. Some sort of emotion that needs to be detoxified that could potentially be blocking your ambitions. And the ambitions could be anything around maybe a spiritual practice or pursuit, or just being able to spend time alone or be with your own thoughts, to be able to meditate. Or even on the flip side, this could be related to expenses. And in that regard, it's this dynamic between your effort and what you're working hard on and what you're losing in the process. And so there's this balance of control and surrender. And what's interesting about this axis is that they're both Dashthana houses. However, the 6th house is an Artha house, and it's a house of effort. Whereas the 12th house is a moksha house, and there's no effort there. It's about actually having no effort and exhibiting surrender. And it's this dynamic between the two houses that you'll be looking at during this full moon, and especially reflecting on that 6th house part of your daily routines, or of where you need to let go of control. What can you control, and then what do you need to release that you have no control over? And it could feel uncomfortable, especially with Cancer being there. It's an emotional, feminine sign, and so it could feel discomfort with having to relinquish that control. All right, now let's move on. Pisces ascendant. Pisces, this full moon is taking place in your 5th house and on your 5th and 11th house axis. Now, the 5th house for you is a creative house. It's a Dharma house. It's where you like to express yourself and your truthful identity. And it's opposite the Capricorn house, which is your 11th house of gains and achievements, and it's your goals, and also is represented by society. So this dynamic between the 5th and 11th house is a dynamic force between the truth and the mask that you wear for the public to see. And it's a matter of balancing your expressions with what is expected of you in society. And the 5th house, because it's Cancer, this creative expression, this creativity, it is something that you take very personally. And opposite to that is your ambitions and goals, where you like to take credit, right? It's Capricorn, it's where you like to take credit for your wins and your successes. And that's seen here between the 5th and 11th house for you Pisces. So this full moon in the 5th house is a time to reflect on the emotional boundaries that you have within this space between your personal identity and expression and how the world sees you, what their expectations of how you should act and be. And it's that dynamic, that tension between those two energies is what is at play during this full moon. So that's what to reflect on. And it's a Dharma house, so it's going to feel connected to your purpose, and it will, give meaning and direction. It's also would be easy for you to make this change because the 5th house is connected to your purpose and meaning in life, and so therefore it's a necessary change that needs to be made. And I'm talking about the moon. The full moon will be at 29 degrees of Cancer, which is a Gandanta point, and so there's some sort of karmic knot untying that needs to be done, and it will not feel good because your emotions are there with your personal expression, and it's not going to feel good, but it is necessary, and you know that. So there's something that needs to be detoxified regarding your expression and your creativity.